judges next week. Depending on the outcome of next week's hearing, Elliott could start serving that suspension in Week 10. Now, after a rough start to 2017, Elliott has been dominant the last 2 games. The Cowboys are feeding him more and more, and he's doing much more with those carries. Last week, he became the 4th player in Cowboys history with 100 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. We'll see if he can do it against the Chiefs coming up on Sunday. For more perspective on Elliott and the Cowboys, bring in NFL insider Dan Graziano and Bill Polian as well. Dan, let me start with you, because we came into this morning thinking that he was going to be suspended. Now he's going to be able to play. How did we get here?
The Second Circuit Court of Appeals granted him a temporary stay of the suspension because they cannot hear his request for a full injunction until next week. So they are going to hear his request for an injunction that would supersede the judge's ruling from Monday night that basically put the suspension back in place. But they can't do that till next week, so they ruled today that he can play in the meantime. So it gives him 1 more game. Yeah. And then, as you mentioned, a 3-judge panel will hear the case for the injunction next week. If they rule in his favor next week, then the suspension is on hold again. But if they rule against him next week, then he would have to start serving that suspension the following week in Week 10, and he would be suspended for the ensuing 6 games, barring some other legal maneuverings that always seem to be out there.
The only place to go at that point is to the Supreme Court, and that's unlikely.
And that also wouldn't be timely. Right. It would be unlikely he'd get a stay from that.
Bill, let me ask you this, because we've been having this back and forth with Elliott's eligibility all season long, and the Cowboys still have games to play each and every week. How much pressure do you believe this situation has put on the team as it tries to stay focused on the task at hand, which is to pursue a championship?
I don't think that it puts a lot of pressure on it. I mean, once you know what the situation is, as a player, as a coach, as a general manager, you just move forward and do your job. Okay. So you presume every week that if there's a court appearance, you're going to lose it. Get people ready in the event he's not there. Now, in this particular case, because I don't want to get into the issues, they're too arcane, but there's some likelihood that the 3-judge panel will give him the stay because it turns on something called irreparable harm. He never gets those games back. That doesn't affect the larger case. But if he does get the stay, then the likelihood is he'll play the rest of the season, because then the court will say, all right, we're going to give you the stay, but now we're going to hear the case. Right. And that could stretch into the spring, as we know from Brady. Appeals court calendars and hearings take a long time. So this next one is likely to be dispositive. We'll know what the answer for 2017 is when the 3-judge panel rules next week.
And just on the matter of game preparation, Ezekiel Elliott, due to the suspension, was not practicing with the Cowboys on Wednesday or Thursday. I'm told by someone with the union that when the ruling came in today, they immediately called him and said, hey, you got to go to practice, and he hustled over there. So it won't be an issue. He's been playing. Obviously, he knows the offense, but he did miss 2 practices for this reason.
Actually, it's probably not a bad idea at this stage of the season.
Yeah, that hurt, right? Head coach Jason Garrett expected to talk to the media within the hour. We're bringing that to you either on this edition of SportsCenter or Coast to Coast coming up at the top of the hour on ESPN. But another big story we want to talk about, in addition to Deshaun Watson's season-ending injury, same division, we're seeing that situation played out for Andrew Luck. He's going to be placed on the IR. Bill, given what we've seen with Luck's recovery and the fact that Watson is a mobile quarterback, how would you advise the Texans to handle his eventual return?
Well, they're going to handle it fine. First of all, he's had this injury before on the other leg. Deshaun has. So he knows what's coming in terms of the surgery, in terms of the rehab. Right. That's point 1. Point 2 is give him all the time he needs to come back. Don't get faced with the noise that, well, we need him back. He's got to be back. No, he doesn't have to be back until he's 100%. And everyone heals differently. True. So when he's back, he'll be back. That's the answer to that. And the most important thing is to make sure that the rehab is structured and followed explicitly. And that's not to say that Deshaun is not a great worker. In fact, just the opposite is true. He's a great worker. And so you want to guard against him pushing himself too fast. Protect him from himself, because he's going to want to get back very quickly. Let Mother Nature do her work and monitor the rehab, and everything's likely to be okay.
When I was talking to Texans people yesterday after the news broke, one of them said to me, you know, it's terrible news for us and for the kid, but he'll be back. He's a winner. That's the way they look at him in that building, that he'll be able to recover from this and be fine. In the meantime, you know, can they win with Tom Savage at quarterback and now the new backups they're signing off the street?
Well, the good news is that Bill O'Brien has been through a much tougher situation at Penn State when he was the head coach. Well, the program was literally falling apart. And he held it together and, in fact, built it into the forerunner of what it is today. He resurrected the program. So he's used to being in a crisis situation. He has the kind of personality to handle that. The players respond to him. But in terms of Lady Luck, this franchise couldn't have had worse luck because they lose J.J. Watt. And they now lose their quarterback.
And another reason for the Texans to be hopeful, when Deshaun Watson tore the other ACL when he was a freshman at Clemson, he came back and accounted for nearly 100 touchdowns over the next 2 seasons for Clemson. And, oh, yeah, they just won the national championship as well. Bill Polian and Dan Graziano, appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.